My name is Lindsay Gary, and I'm the artistic director and the founder of Dance Africana. Dance Africana is a professional dance company that celebrates the dances of Africa and the African diaspora. Today's piece was around the history of Richard Brock and the history of Brock Park and the First Ward community. Our piece was really dedicated to everything he did to establish the institutions he built for formerly enslaved Africans here in the Houston area. And so a few of those things were establishing one of the first schools for people of color or black children here in the city. I was personally really inspired by the story of Richard Brock. I'm born and raised in Houston. I still live in Houston. I'm a historian and artist, but I actually had never heard of him. And so I thank Fresh Arts for even bringing that to my attention so that we can tell the greater Houston area about this amazing legacy. And I was also very inspired by the fact that he was himself formerly a slave, but he wasn't freed. He actually purchased his own freedom. So it wasn't like he waited until emancipation. The piece is also about Miss Cleola Williams, whose mural is back here, because she was very instrumental in making sure that the park that we're at and that we performed at was actually named after him. So I decided to bring together three major elements, so history, the art of dance, and then also spirituality. I brought these things together because I wanted to do an embodied reenactment of what that would have looked like. What would have looked like with Richard Brock escaping slavery or purchasing his freedom, or others like him, and what would it have felt like? What did he feel like? How can we embody that energy? How can we thank him for all the things he did? And so which you see through the altar that we created for him. I truly believe that outside of historians, that artists are really second in line in making sure that our histories are protected and preserved. And I think that it's so important that Fresh Arts decided to tell these stories of the 6th Ward and the 1st Ward, and that we put this mural up of Miss Cleola so people know, the work that she did and the work that she put into making sure history was preserved. I think it's really important as artists that we always tell those stories, and I really hope that we did, we honored his legacy and the legacy that those that came behind him and with him were trying to establish.
Well, years and years ago, Richard Brock, a slave, decided to come into this neighborhood, and he organized and helped organize a church, St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal, and paid some money towards it, and a school for slave children was born out of that church. And it moved on into a regular school itself. And I attended that school, I think my husband, and many older people before me. But Richard Brock helped do that. He bought himself out of slavery, and he owned, I guess he must have owned many properties. And he helped organize 2 or 3 other churches, and the Mason organization for blacks. So he was a pretty busy man. So the park didn't become a park until after the school was gone. It moved down onto Houston Avenue that was another fight that we had to get a better school, because we only had just a wooden school where looked like just the blue wooden buildings that were put together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got some better. My kids went to that school too.
Mm-hmm.
And graduated from that school. And it's still there. I think that they've closed the school down. I'm not sure. From what I understand, they said that there weren't enough children to actually feed the school. So almost everybody moved down to Crockett Elementary School.
Mm-hmm.
But Richard Brock, the school, Randall Jones, when the young people were around there and knowing the history of Richard Brock and the fact that he had bought that land, I felt that it should be renamed in his honor. And so we had to work at it, and I had to go to city council and had to hold several meetings to see that Brock name was changed.
Mm-hmm.
Man Randall Jones was somebody who had, from what I understand, he had won some kind of meeting where he gave money,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave him the name. But it wasn't appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how finally got to get it named after Richard Brock.
Mm-hmm. Did you face any challenges when you were like trying to convince your neighbors or trying to convince the community or trying to convince the Houston City Council? Did you face any challenges when doing so?
Well, certainly, there's always challenges when you're trying to get something done that seems to go just a little bit different from whatever hierarchy there is. And I had to have several meetings, and I had to go before City Council and show them the papers, the deeds to that church, and how he had put the monies in for that particular land, and who he was, and his activities that got this particular neighborhood working for a bigger cause.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they told me at first that they didn't change things like that, but I know better,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew better. So several people that were on my side, they got together and they changed the name. That what I said all along, that we haven't learned in Houston, I won't say just First Ward, to preserve our natural historic. We've got a lot of historic places, and they haven't been preserved. And therefore it leaves our children in the dark, too, because they don't know about the history that we've had. This is what has happened with these kids in learning what has happened with their history all over our nation now. And why we're in such a pickle, because we've never learned. Just average people, we go to work, come home, maybe go to church, but not the actual struggle that has gone on between people to try to get our history preserved, to try to understand where we stand as a people and how much we actually need to lean on each other, especially as far as neighborhoods concerned. Because if the ditch is filling up with water at my house and you live next door, it's filling up with yours too. And the things that contaminate our air and stuff, it's all a part of just living, and that as a people, we have to work together to get things done. Just what I said, these changes, and we haven't learned that there are things that we really don't have to put up with. And so we have to, this is one reason to hold on to your civic organizations and try to build them into strong entities. Because those people who build the freeways and who the carpetbaggers, as they say, and the people who want to change your neighborhood because of money has nothing to do. They don't even live in the neighborhood, but they want to change it for monetary profit. You have to fight that, and you have to do it as a group. You can't do it by yourself. They wanted to name First Ward anything except First Ward. They didn't feel like it was named cool enough. You had to actually fight to get the name First Ward, because that's what it is. One of the first, we had the ward system. This was first, you had second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So your history is just, thrown away. Well, I would like for people to know the history of this word, and that it was the first, and that there are things that should be preserved in our neighborhood and our history and those people who helped to build it. I really, and this is the honest to God truth, I had no idea that somebody would honor me with a mural or anything like that. That wasn't what I worked for. I worked in my neighborhood, because I had 5 children, and I knew that the only way that they're going to be able to make it was to have a better education. While I'm working, looking at mine, I looked around at the rest of them, those that hadn't been out of the area and who never gone farther than to maybe to downtown, never to a major park, never to see another area or another city. They weren't able to hold their school proms and things that they wanted to have, the nights out. And I tried to work with them. I had a neighborhood group of about 100 kids that we would sit and discuss the politics and the fact that they had to have, not necessarily going, but had to have a better education to be able to live within this country. And it's deplorable what has happened within this past 3 years. It's unbelievable what has happened with our country and the way that it has been thrown and mashed, and just ignorance, just propounded at this higher level. So that's what I've always fought for, a betterment for these kids and for our community.